joining us this afternoon to talk about the back to school and the state of public education in Texas. Without further ado, I want to introduce our great Congresswoman Sheila Jackson.
The tragedy of Uvalde happened in May of 2022. I remember it distinctly because I was one of the first members of Congress to go to Uvalde, to stand by the memorial, to attend the church service with President Biden, and to hug children whose tears would move a mountain. These were the friends of those who died. As I went to memorial and handed out stuffed toys, rather than the sounds of a playground or a softball game, as one of the 9-year-olds and 11-year-olds told me, they were crying for their friends that may never leave this community. One would expect that the chief executive of a state that has seen the most devastating killings in the last decade, along with so many over the years, school shootings have proliferated since Columbine, that governor will provide not a task force with a senseless and unsympathetic report, but that governor would gather the superintendents of this state, the organization that deals with schools, that can be so apt at giving grades on schools and even closing schools, TEA. You would think that could be the agency that the governor would convene to be able to provide for our school districts, rural and urban. My district is a vast district. It has inner city, but it also has small cities as well. It has unincorporated areas. Those schools need the help of the state. In the American Rescue Plan, we've sent billions of dollars across the nation. Texas, one of the largest states, received a mountain of dollars to be able to utilize in the post-pandemic world. We don't know what the motive of this killer was, but these dollars would be eligible to help small districts and urban districts to provide security for our children. Parents are fearing, they are fearful, they are ready to pull their children out of school. Because if you listen to a parent who spoke to me directly and said their little baby girl bled out, and one parent who we know famously who testified in Washington, baby girl smeared her body with blood so that she would live. We know one of the teachers bled out, and we know that officers stood for hours not being able to do anything while the murderer murdered our children. And so, again, my deepest sympathy to the families and children of Uvalde, to those community members still there trying to live with the pain and trying to find answers. And then a governor who only to date, met with parents and never gave them any answers about the fault, more money, more security, dollars for a new school. This is a stain on our state. Let me also say this. The threat level in this country has risen since the unfortunate actions of the former president after a legitimate and legal search warrant was issued that was documented by a federal court and sworn federal law enforcement officers. This threat is not just to those of us in public life. This threat is around the nation. In this atmosphere, more than any other time, it is important that we have the kind of responsible security mechanisms in place. America is at a different point. America is getting an internal threat. Domestic terrorism is now much higher than any outside threat. And we as Democrats want to make sure that there is no politics in the security of our children. We want to make sure that the utility of the federal government can be matched with state government. Has Governor Abbott called on the federal government, the U.S. Department of Education, to collaborate with him to ensure safety and security for our schools? He would have the standing to do that because of Uvalde. Has he asked members of Congress, the United States Senate, to help him with particular funding or those skilled personnel in the U.S. Department of Education that could come here to Texas and help give us a matrix of security for the entire state? Has that occurred? It has not. I am frightened for the parents who's concerned, but I can assure you that we who are elected are going to work as hard as we can to make sure that the resources will come as the school districts ask for. But it should be noted that we have heard nothing from the state, nothing from TEA, nothing from any leader in the state that deals with education issues. I think it is shameful. We're on our own, but we're going to protect our babies. And we are going to assure the people and the family members in Uvalde that we are listening, we are helping, and we're not going to leave them alone. I expect to be in Uvalde at the federal hearing in the coming weeks, but we will provide them as much as they need. Our only question is, where is the government? Where is the state agencies? Where is the state trying to help these families? We can't leave them alone.
So you haven't received any calls or anything about these agencies that you mentioned to get help, to get some monies about that? The check?
The Texas Education Agency does a great job of closing schools. I have heard nothing, to my knowledge. Our superintendents, there are a number of school districts in my state, in the state, of course, and there are a number of school districts in my congressional district. I have heard nothing of them saying that the TEA is helping. We do know that HISD, let me be very clear, that is starting very early, has worked to provide enhanced equipment for their school police. That has been on their own. Now, those are resources on their own. And some of those resources may even be federal resources. But if we heard about TEA, it wouldn't be quiet. It would be the governor announcing that he's working with the Texas Education Agency because it has a relationship with all the school districts in Texas, and that they are formulating a security policy not just for the 18 congressional district schools, but for across the state. This is a time to do it. The governor had a task force named after Uvalde happened. I am a member of the United States Congress. I might be asked to give additional funding. I don't know what the report was. I don't know what it had to do with school safety. We did in our bipartisan gun bill, where we need to do more work, but we did in the federal government provide more dollars for safer schools. That was under Joe Biden. President Biden did that. But I have not heard of a plan coming from Governor Abbott dealing with school safety in the state of Texas, the epicenter of the violence and the death of these children in Uvalde. These parents have asked for something. What are you going to do for our children? It doesn't matter that Robb Elementary is going to be torn down. What are you doing for them going to other schools, and how are you helping them replace Robb Elementary School? All of the governor's agencies or staff should be on the ground in Uvalde. We don't have any information about that. So I believe that it's a question for the governor to answer and his staff, for TEA to answer, and I don't think that we should expect that every school district can act on their own. Every school district doesn't have the resources that some of the bigger school districts have, and even those school districts are struggling. They're not running over with money. If it had not been for the American Rescue Plan, and now Safer Communities dollars, but remember, federal dollars don't draw down quickly, and federal dollars go directly to the state. Don't you think the governor, we passed that bill more than a month ago. Don't you think the governor could have stood up and said, right now, because of Safer Communities, I'm announcing a plan to help all of our school districts. They're not going to struggle. We're coming in with the federal dollars to be able to help our school district. Has anybody heard that? We have not as members of Congress, and that's our bill. I had that bill in my congressional committee, my subcommittee. I'm the chair of the crime subcommittee. I had that bill. We helped push that bill out to the United States Senate, and they crafted it such that it came back in a bipartisan manner, and we voted on it in the House. I know that bill very well, and it does have a sizable amount of money for securing our schools.
So you think the governor is just holding or hovering that money instead of being dispersed to the ISDs?
The governor is leaving us guessing about what is happening with federal funding that he could utilize, and what plan does the governor have as the head of the state, the CEO, the chief executive officer, to help all of our school districts, large and small. That's what I think the tragedy is, large and small. We have heard nothing. And we, as members of Congress, the colleagues that were here, Congresswoman Garcia, Congressman Green, all obviously were in play about the federal dollars. And I don't simply have to say this myself. Has anyone seen a headline in any of the newspapers of the governor leading, even after weeks and weeks, months of not meeting with the parents, and then meeting with the parents? I have no idea what comment he made after. I think the parents were not fully happy about what was said. Their questions were not answered, but there was no news reporting of anything the governor promised to those parents. I would have been able to come out, not violating their privacy, but saying, I have been moved, this is devastating, and I'm announcing a state safe school security plan. And I'm using the federal dollars. And I'm asking the U.S. Department of Education to expedite those dollars to Texas, because we're the epicenter of the most recent violent, bloody school shooting of teachers and children. That's what you do as a governor. And if you had done that, we would have galvanized around to make sure those dollars were in fact expedited as quickly as possible. That is not happening. It saddens me. I hope what we're saying today is seen by the governor's staff, and that he can make up for this by quickly moving. Because what do we have a chief executive for? The president has done his job. We have money after money. Please remember, American Rescue Plan, Safer Communities Act, and we just passed the Inflation Reduction Act, which at least has money for health care. The Safer Communities Act has mental health dollars. Those dollars need to be down in Uvalde to help those children throughout the school year that are coming back. You can announce a plan for that. Let me announce a plan. The state of Texas needs to announce a plan using the Safer Community federal dollars that were listed for mental health separate and came out of our bill, and school security. Where is that plan? That's my angst, that's my anxiety. That is the reason why I joined the Texas Democrats, but we also stand here as citizens of Texas, as mothers and fathers. I have 2 children that went through public school, grandchildren that are in public school now, 7 years old. Don't think that I'm not frightened. Not because I know that the school district is not working as hard as it possibly can, but I'm going to make sure that every T is crossed, every I is dotted. I stand with all the parents out this door, taking those precious children to school. What did I spend the weekend doing? Going to every backpack giveaway. We'll be doing a backpack giveaway. What did I see? A lot of children, bright-eyed, some a little scared, some not knowing what the school year is going to be like just because they're young. And you were encouraging them, giving them the backpack, making a smile come on their face. But have I done enough? Am I in a state where the governor cares one iota to offer a statement to the entire state? And as well, I will be looking to Washington as to whether or not we need to make a statement about the increase in domestic terrorism through social media to calm Americans down, and to get them to recognize that there is a legal system that is in process, that no one is attacking any individual unfairly, and that we need to act as Americans. So it takes a voice of leadership to be able to give comfort to people. And that means in this instance of the education, it takes a voice of the governor of the state of Texas in the aftermath of an AK-15 AR-15. I'm on AK-47, which is not used.
Same thing.
Yeah, AR-15 that was utilized to buddy our babies. And, you know, it's sad, I know that it's sad that this governor couldn't even raise the age of those who could purchase an AR-15. He could have done it on his own. So I just want him to mention the safety and security of this state. Hope that what we have done today will trigger the governor and TEA to do that. That's my reason for being here. And that's something that I'm going to continue to promote when I go back to Washington. I'm going back this week for meetings, and I want to make sure that President Biden, our U.S. Department of Education, who I'll be calling, the Secretary of Education will be calling and asking what kind of resources are already in the state that can be used for school security. Let him tell me directly so that the governor can be aware of it and that he can stand up in this state and do something. I think my final words are, do something. There are too many worried parents, guardians, grandmothers, granddad, taking children to school this week and next week, fearful, entrusting these babies to the school, knowing that the schools don't want to do anything but educate the children and keep them safe. But they are not military bases. They're not armed bastions of security. They're just schools teaching our children, and we want our children to not be fearful and to learn. They've got to learn. So we have to have a plan. We have none. I'm hoping this will wake up Austin, wake up the governor, wake up the governor's mansion, and I'm hoping that we'll see something in the coming weeks. But I'm going to seek federal help to make sure that the Democratic leadership of the White House and the Senate and Congress, that we are working with states, even if the states don't want to help themselves. Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you all so